I'm Dennis Dostert, host for Understanding Government. This is a special show, and our guest today is Senator Ted Kennedy for the 12th District. Now, the 12th District includes Madison, Guilford, Killingworth, Brantford, North Brantford, and Durham. Welcome, Ted. How are you?
Thank you very much for having me on the show, Dennis. I really appreciate the opportunity. It's great to be here on Guilford Community Television.
Can you tell us something about the journey that brought you to Brantford?
Well, I've been living in Connecticut for about 30 years. I first came to Connecticut as a student undergraduate at Wesleyan University when I was 17 years old, and really have never left. After college, I worked briefly in a disability policy office in Boston, but returned to become a student, get a master's degree at the Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Studies, where I met my wife and been living in Connecticut ever since. Went on to the University of Connecticut School of Law, and really love this area. And since the very first time I stepped foot in Brantford, I said, this is the place I want to live and bring up my children.
And what have you been doing as a career until now?
Well,
as a lawyer. But.
Yeah, as I said, I am very, part of my life story, Dennis, you may know this, is when I was 12 years old, I was diagnosed with a rare form of bone cancer, and I lost my leg to cancer. And it really, became the defining moment of my life, and really charted me on a course towards advocacy for people with disabilities. And I'm also interested in the public health aspects of environmental contamination, people getting sick because they're exposed to toxic substances, exposed to cancer-causing agents and whatnot. So my whole life has really been in the realm of public policy and advocacy for others. And after I left the forestry school, I worked in New Haven on a lead poisoning program, pediatric lead poisoning, which is, as we all know now, is one of the leading known causes of intellectual disability. And then went on to law school. I worked as an attorney at the New Haven law firm of Wiggin and Dana for a number of years, and then was counsel in-house, that's an in-house lawyer, for the Connecticut Hospital Association, where my clients were the acute care hospital system that we have here in Connecticut. So I'm really, and have taken that advocacy work in a more formal way as the elected state senator for the 12th District, which is such a privilege and an honor.
And this is the first time you've run for elected office, in spite of the fact that you're probably the member of the most well-known political family in America. Why? What took you so long to get into the family business?
Well, I did take my time.
Yeah.
I think that I had an opportunity to run for office at other points in my life, but I just didn't feel like it was the right time. I wanted to make sure when I did throw my hat in the ring, so to speak, that I would have something to offer, that I could really benefit from my experience as a lawyer, my experience as a business owner, my experience as a father, and I really wanted to have the time. As you know, Dennis, you're involved in many community affairs here as well in Guilford. You know that even serving on the local boards here in town requires a tremendous amount of time, and I wanted to make sure, I believe that my number one responsibility was really to my children, and I really wanted to make sure that I would be there for them in their formative years and their young years before I got involved in politics. Because although the state Senate is considered technically a part-time job, we all know that to do anything well requires a full-time mentality and a full-time commitment.
And what drew you to state senator instead of another position in the state?
Well, I think, first of all, the Connecticut General Assembly is a terrific place. I love the state of Connecticut. This is the most incredible area in my mind. My district spans Brantford, Guilford, Madison, North Brantford, Durham, and Killingworth. We have the beautiful coastal towns, of course, of Guilford and Brantford and Madison. We have rural districts steeped in a rich agricultural history, such as North Brantford and Durham and Killingworth. So it's diverse. The people are wonderful, a lot of community engagement. And really, Dennis, today, state government is where the action is. We hear constantly how there's gridlock and partisanship, hyper-partisanship in places like Washington, D.C., where it's very, very difficult to get anything done because of the toxic political climate that exists there. Not so in the state capitals around the country, where a lot of the innovation, a lot of the public policy experimentation is going on. And just for example, as Senate Chair of the Environment Committee, I'm in charge of all environmental legislation that passes through the General Assembly. And in the last 2 years, we've passed over 38 bills related to clean water, farmland preservation, toxic substances on our school grounds, pollinator health, I mean, animal cruelty. The list goes on and on and on, that are really models for the rest of the country and indeed the federal government. And we've been able to do that because we are able to work in a collaborative way in the legislature, unlike many other parts of government. So I saw, of course, there was the retirement of longtime serving state senator Ed Meyer, who's a Guilford resident, of course. So his retirement, created an open seat, which was an opportunity for me to finally run for office, and I'm really glad I did so.
You're already the chair of a committee. And
Yes.
that's interesting, because one of the questions I had next is, do you have any adjustment problems in your first month as state senator? But apparently you adjusted very well.
Well, look, I've been involved in advocacy my whole life. I'm an attorney, I think, which helps a lot when you're, part of a law writing group such as the General Assembly. It's not necessary, but it's certainly very helpful. And so I'm familiar with the demands that politics has and the requirements of the job. As I mentioned before a few moments ago, I'm a graduate of the Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Studies, which is one of the nation's foremost environmental public policy graduate schools. So now I'm able to take that policy knowledge and my advocacy for clean water and clean air, prevention of exposure of toxic substances to kids, for example, and actually do something about it as the chair of the Environment Committee. That takes up a lot of my time, being the chair of a committee, because I'm responsible for organizing all the legislation, passing through. We had about 300 proposed bills, of which each of the last 2 years, of which we had public hearings on about 60. And I also have been able to work in a really collaborative way with my colleagues who've been serving, many of them on the Environment Committee for a lot longer than I have.
When you say we, you mean the Environment Committee?
Yes, yes, but the environment is a really important issue to those of us who live here on the shoreline. We know, for example, that Long Island Sound is the keystone environmental asset of our state. We know how important it is, not just aesthetically, not just, isn't it beautiful to look at and take our kids swimming in Long Island Sound, but we know it's critical to the economic vitality of our region, because one of the main reasons why people want to locate here in these bucolic, historic coastal communities along the Connecticut shoreline is the quality of life. People like knowing that they can purchase, locally grown fruits and vegetables. They like having open space. The active organizations like the Guilford Land Trust and other groups that are preserving and protecting. In fact, this community of Guilford has one of the largest percentages of protected land in the entire state of Connecticut. That's because people care about these assets and want to preserve and protect these assets for future generations. So it's a strong ethic of the people that live here in this community, and it's also ideas that transcend political boundaries. In other words, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican and you live here on the shoreline, chances are, preserving and protecting our environment is high up on your list of things that it's important for the state of Connecticut to be involved with.
It is. Now, do you have a staff?
I do.
Okay.
I have a very small staff. I have one legislative aide. Now, I'm fortunate as since I chair a committee, I can avail myself of, for example, the committee clerk. The staff in the General Assembly is excellent. I have a fantastic lawyer who works on the Environment Committee, who helps me research and draft a lot of this legislation, is extremely experienced. But obviously, my number one job, Dennis, is to serve my constituents, to serve my towns, to serve the local businesses here, and to serve my constituents. And that is all needs to be done by one person. I'm told by members of the General Assembly that I receive more emails and phone calls than nearly every other legislator in Hartford. I'm not surprised by that because that's been true for every single one of the members of my family who've served in office, and I consider it an honor to be able to intercede and really help so many people on the shoreline. But it's really, that's my number one job, is to be people's personal representative in Hartford, and that's why I've hosted numerous office hours. You know about them.
Yes.
Nearly one a month in all of these different towns, most often at the public libraries, which are such assets to our communities, where people can come, share with me personally their situations, and actually they've been the sparks of a lot of my legislative initiatives, these personal conversations that I've had with literally thousands of people from the 12th District.
And this is how you identify the needs of the state so that you can propose legislation.
Of
by
course,
talking to all
of
these
course.
people.
I mean, look, I have my own ideas
Uh-huh.
as an environmentalist, as a person with a disability who's been very active in trying to expand the rights and opportunities of people with disabilities. As a healthcare lawyer, I see a lot of changes in the healthcare system. I see a lot of waste and inefficiency, and I ran for office because I wanted to fight against all that waste and inefficiency. We need to do that. So I have my own ideas about how we can improve the healthcare delivery system, about how we can expand home care opportunities for our seniors and people with disabilities, about how we can, for example, preserve and protect our environment. But I rely on conversations, daily conversations with the citizens of the 12th District. They tell me what's on their mind. When a specific bill is being proposed, for example, that's going to impact the business community, I call business owners here in the district to ask them, do you think this is a good idea or not, and why? When there's a particular piece of legislation concerning education, for example, an area where there's massive transformation taking place in our educational systems, I speak to the local PTAs, I speak to the boards of educations, and I speak to the superintendents of these schools, so I can become very informed before I make a policy decision or cast a vote on those issues.
And how do you get the bill passed? What do you do? What are the steps that you take to keep a bill moving?
I think that's an excellent question. As I mentioned before, just in the Environment Committee, which I serve on the Public Health Committee and the Transportation Committee as well, but the Environment Committee, since I do chair that committee, that's my primary area of responsibility. We had, anyone can propose a bill on any issue. They write to me saying, "Dear Mr. Chairman, would you please consider legislation on whatever the issue is?" And then we what's called screen it. I sit with my House chairman, as well as the two ranking members, the two Republicans, Clark Chapin and John Shaben, and we screen these bills. We talk about, is this an area that we can develop consensus around, or is this going to be an overly political issue, or is this an issue that we don't feel like we can get broad consensus on this certain topic? And that's what we do. I'm proud to say that all 38 of the bills that we have written and passed from the Environment Committee have all been passed with overwhelming bipartisan support, most of them unanimous support. Now, the way that happens is working together collaboratively as a team to try to accommodate other people's points of view. I'm not one that believes that it should be my view and my view only, and that I try to cram things through the Environment Committee, for example, on a party line vote. That is not the way, that's not, first of all, not what the citizens of the 12th District want, in my view, and it's not good for the state. I think in order to solve the problems of our state, we need to form consensus, common sense solutions around these issues that we face. And so consequently, how these bills get passed is we have certain ideas about particular bills. For example, this year we passed, again, broad bipartisan support, the most comprehensive pollinator health bill in the country. Now, people may not realize that the state of Connecticut, like many other states in the country, have experienced a dramatic decline in wild and managed honeybees. In fact, in the last 2 years, we've lost nearly 70% of all bees. Now, these are beneficial insects, these pollinators. They are required to pollinate nearly 80% of all the food that we consume. Now, we live in an agricultural community, so for example, Bishop's Orchards or some of the other farms up in Durham and throughout in North Branford, they rely on pollinators, on bees. So for example, we work very collaboratively with trying to find the best ideas, working with scientists from the state, talking to literally dozens and dozens of people about what do we think would be the most effective way to address the pollinator death problem that we have and to enhance that issue. And so I'm proud to say that we passed the most comprehensive pollinator health law in the nation. So it's now when we do that, we work on these issues far before this general session gets going. As you know, we have a part-time General Assembly. This past year, we met in the first week of February, and we had our legislative work done by the end of May. We had a couple special sessions, but by and large, it's a very condensed period of time. So like anything else in life, Dennis, you need to be prepared. And I'm already now, thinking about and preparing for the legislative issues that I may want to pursue next term, because you just can't walk into the State House in the first day of office and then come up with a brilliant legislative idea. You need to work with the different groups that will be affected. For example, the State Park Organization. If you want to pass a bill trying to enhance the fiscal sustainability of state parks, well, you've got to talk to the people who are involved with the state parks. You need to talk to the Connecticut Park and Forest Association, the Friends of Hammonasset. You need to get all the different constituency groups that maybe have an idea and can also be the grassroots support that you need to get these issues brought to the up to the top of the ladder in terms of legislative priorities.
You mentioned that it's a part-time job.
Yes.
And what do you get paid for the job?
Well, the base salary is $28,000 a year. So
it's a little bit more than the House, because I think Sean told me his was 25, I believe.
Well, there are, for example, since I'm a committee chair, I get a little bit more, but it's not a tremendous amount of money. It would certainly be difficult to support a family, but then again, it's a part-time legislature, and quite honestly, I think it's good that we have a part-time legislature, because it allows the legislative process to be open to many people from various different walks of life. For example, there is a member on the Environment Committee who works for Federal Express, and he frequently shows up at the Environment Committee hearings with his Federal Express jumpsuit on, having driven all night long, delivering packages for Federal Express. We have small business owners and other people who own restaurants, people involved in all different kinds of activities, right? And so they bring with them to the legislature, many different perspectives. These are not career politicians. These are people who have things going on in their outside life. And I think that the people of Connecticut honestly benefit from that perspective.
So they're not all lawyers.
Not all lawyers. There are a lot of lawyers like myself, because it obviously takes a certain type of job. that would allow you, and I'm thankful to my law firm for giving me the kind of flexibility that I need to serve in the legislature and really be gone for 2 or 3 months in a concentrated period of time. So it takes a very understanding, takes a very understanding boss at your regular job.
Now, I understand that you're a whip.
Yes.
What's a whip?
Well, it's a lot less impressive than it sounds,
Yeah.
Dennis. A whip is really somebody who is responsible for counting votes and quote unquote whipping up the votes. So, for example, there is a function when you're going to pass a piece of legislation. Perhaps it's a more controversial piece of legislation. It's important before you bring a bill up for a vote that you know how many votes you have, right? Who's going to vote for it or who's going to vote against it. The last thing you want to find out is when bringing a proposal up, whether it's at the committee level or on the floor, and find out that your proposal has no votes or a lot fewer votes than you want it to. Because obviously, if I know that a proposal of mine does not have the votes, forget about the Republican votes, maybe it doesn't even have enough Democrat votes, right, to get a proposal through. Then obviously a proposal is not going to be raised to begin with because that's embarrassing to the proponent of a bill. So one of the functions of a whip is to make sure that votes are counted, that you know where people stand on the issues, and can accurately assess the prospects of different pieces of legislation.
How did you get chosen for that?
Well, it's honestly, it's kind of a more ceremonial title than anything else. It really is just a formality. In all honesty, Dennis. Yeah.
Okay. Now, what do you consider to be your greatest achievement in your first term?
Well, it's hard to really say what my greatest legislative achievement is. I think the thing that I'm most proud of is being able to work so collaboratively with all of my colleagues. And that ethic that I've brought to office. Of course, I'm a Democrat. I'm proud to be a Democrat. But I also believe that legislators, the primary function of a legislator is to find accommodations for other people's points of view in order to make progress on a particular issue. And that's how we've gotten so many bills done in the Environment Committee. So we've passed the Long Island Sound Blue Plan. We passed the most.
What's that?
That's the Long Island Sound Blue Plan is finally making a scientifically based, data-driven analysis of all of the assets of Long Island Sound. Okay, the business assets, the environmental assets, in order to develop a plan for Long Island Sound. We don't have a plan for Long Island Sound. There's recreational uses, there's commercial uses like agriculture. There's obviously a vested interest in clean water. There's a commercial fishery. So we need to figure out, there's a lot of competing uses for Long Island Sound. So this is an idea that has been forwarded by Democrats and Republicans alike, and I'm proud that we were able to get that piece of legislation done to finally use scientifically based analysis and planning for what I consider our greatest environmental asset. Secondly, we passed the toughest microbeads legislation in the country. Microbeads are the tiny plastic beads that are deliberately added to many consumer products, including facial washes and toothpaste, by companies such as Colgate-Palmolive, Procter & Gamble, Unilever, and the like. They're in hundreds of products. They wash right down the drain and are not captured in the sewage treatment plant and end up in our rivers and streams and eventually in Long Island Sound. Instead of just calling for an outright ban on microbeads, which many people wanted, I chose to work together with the businesses to try to see if we can phase these out over time. So you're not leaving a lot of the stores holding the bag with inventory of items that they can't sell, and giving them time to come up with substitutes for these materials. and I was very proud to say that within about 6 months, the U.S. Congress passed a microbeads law largely fashioned on the bill that we had here in the state of Connecticut. We've also most recently passed a much more comprehensive animal cruelty bill. Now, animals fall under the under the jurisdiction of the Environment Committee, as does agriculture. You know, animal abuse is a despicable crime, yet every day we hear about people that are torturing and mutilating animals and getting away with it because so often these cases are dismissed or somebody gets accelerated rehabilitation and really don't have to account for their crime and end up becoming repeat offenders and go on, statistics show that people go on much higher level of domestic abuse and other such crimes. So finally we passed a law this year to make the second offense, you have to pay the price. In other words, you can't continue to abuse animals and get away with it. People are going to be held accountable for these crimes once and for all. I already talked about the pollinator bill, which is probably the single most important environmental bill we got done this year. We passed a bill concerning consumer packaging. Consumer packaging is an important issue because consumer packaging consists of about between 25 and 33% of all our municipal solid waste. That's when we put things out in the garbage. About 33% of all that is consumer packaging, and our towns spend millions and millions of dollars discarding consumer packaging. And because we are now purchasing so many things online, so many things arrive in boxes, and their boxes have smaller boxes, and there's popcorn and wrapping. Finally, you get to the little item that's about that big, and there's a tremendous amount of waste. Well, who ends up paying for that waste are actually the taxpayers of our town because it's driving up the disposal costs for our towns. So we're looking at trying to figure out how to reduce and reuse and recycle more of these products, and I think that's going to be an important bill. But probably the single most important bill that I was able to pass this past session was a mental health parity bill. As you know, there are many families here on the shoreline who are impacted by mental health problems. And people tell me that they're at their wits' end because their children need mental health services and are told by their health insurance companies that they're not qualified for that to receive coverage for those services. Or people go and take their child into Yale New Haven Hospital because the child is having an emergency, and the hospital says, I think your child needs, psychiatric help. They need a bed in a psychiatric facility, but there are no, the insurance won't pay for it, and we can't do anything about it. So even though mental health parity is on paper been eliminated, in the last few years, we've been able to eliminate a lot of the obvious differentials in coverage and payment between mental health services and physical health services. The reality is the pre-authorization and the denials and coverage, in my view, for mental health services, these are substance abuse, addiction services, mental health services, far exceed the denials and coverage issues for, say, cancer, diabetes, or orthopedics. But we're going to find out once and for all, because what my bill does is require health insurance companies to disclose the amount of pre-authorizations and coverage denials for mental health services versus physical health services. And that, I think, is going to finally tell us whether or not we do have a mental health policy parity problem here in the state of Connecticut.
And what do you consider to be the most important issue? That one facing the state today?
Well, no, clearly, Dennis, the number one issue we have, I think everyone would agree, is jobs and the economy. Okay. That eclipses probably everything that we've talked about here today. As important it is to preserve and protect the environment, as important it is to ensure that people get home care as opposed to being forced into nursing homes and all that. None of that is going to be possible. We're not going to be able to pay for home care. We're not going to be able to pay for mental health services or to preserve and protect Long Island Sound unless we have businesses here in the state growing, thriving, paying taxes, employing people. And that's the number one issue that we face as a state. We know that we need to do a much better job. We hear every day how much the state, we need to improve our competitiveness, that we need to streamline regulations, make it easier for businesses to comply with regulations, and whatnot. Now, we're never going to be the cheapest state in the country to live. We never are. We live in an expensive part of the country. Land is very expensive here. We have a very high quality of life. Thankfully, we do rank very high in measures such as quality of life. Our public schools are the best in the country. We have a lot that we have going for us, Dennis, and many parts of the country would kill to be where we are right here. In the Northeast, geographically located, beautiful environment, have train service to Boston and to New York City, right along a major interstate highway, pretty little downtown areas. I mean, this is a pretty special place that
Well,
a lot of people would really love to live here. But we just haven't been able to convert a lot of our assets, a lot of our competitive advantages to actionable business activity. That is our number one issue. And that, along with a lot of the stress that, since the last recession, we haven't fully recovered from that recession. It was a global recession. And now, the jobs that have returned just don't pay the same amount as the ones that we lost during the recession. So the state government is under stress, families are under stress, and businesses in our communities are under stress. That is the single most important issue that faces the state.
And is there anything else that you'd like to add before we close?
No, except that, look, it really is a privilege and an honor to be able to serve the people of the 12th District. Every single day, I'm just amazed by the friends that I have, the work that people do in community organizations across the district. This is such a great place. So it really, I know we can solve these problems. I've faced a lot of adversity in my life myself. And I know that we need to adapt to the new situation. We can't be afraid of the future, Dennis. We have to analyze, adapt, and overcome these problems. I know we can do it, and I just think it's a great place to be. It's a terrific state. Because of our size, I think our problems are more manageable than if we lived in a much larger state. And it's just been a privilege and an honor to represent the people of the 12th District.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dennis.
This concludes our interview with Senator Ted Kennedy. Go online to see an interview with State Representative Sean Scanlon. Good government requires an informed public. I hope this program helps you to make your important decisions as voters and citizens of Connecticut. Goodbye for today.